Hello and welcome to the second presidential debate of ADS. Today we have the two top Democratic nominees, Mr. Jack McCarthy and Mr. Bill McKay. It's going to be a back and forth type of debate, and we're going to open with Mr. McCarthy's question since he won the toss before the debate. Mr. McCarthy's question starts as, Governor McKay, you don't have any military experience at all, so how effective do you feel you could be Commander-in-Chief of the United States military?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this debate. I'm proud to be here. And to answer your question, I believe that seeing and hearing about what's going on in Iraq and basically in our nation's military is good enough. I know how the soldiers feel, and I know how the military operates. You know, as governor of California, I know how systems work. I know how government works. I'm very good friends with a lot of the top defense, top defense people in our country. You know, I've known former secretaries of defense, and I realize that military experience doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a president who cares about the people of our country, who will not waver against enemies abroad and enemies at home, and someone who will just stand up for our values. I believe, honestly, you know what? You know, I didn't prepare for this debate. I'm here talking to the people. I'm just saying what I think because I believe that's the right thing to do. I believe if we want to have a strong country, if we want a strong military, then we just need to have a president who's going to be straightforward with the people, who's going to deal with the problems. And I believe I can combat terrorism just through, you know, standing against it, being strong with our military. I believe that we need to increase our military funding by a huge amount. I believe that we need to increase our soldiers' pay. I believe that we need to stay in Iraq until the job is done. I don't believe we should waver. I think that until you know, Iraqis stand up and Americans stand down, we must stay there. And I believe that hopefully, you know, under new leadership, hopefully when I'm in the White House, we'll be able to move ahead much quicker than we have under this current administration. So, overall, I will protect our country by increasing military funding, by standing up harsh against terrorism, and by getting our troops to stand down in Iraq while Iraqis stand up.
Alright, Mr. McKay's question to Mr. McCarthy follows. What is your strategy on Iraq? How do you believe we can win the war on terror?
My strategy on Iraq is simple. As I've stated time and time again, I think we need to stay the course in Iraq, but I also think we need to start looking at an exit strategy. I think one key component of that is that we need to have a dialogue with the Iraqi government, find out where they're at and what they're comfortable with as far as our troop levels in Iraq, and what they need from us as far as military assistance. When they're ready to stand on their own 2 feet, I say we let them do it. At that point, I support a phased withdrawal from Iraq, and I also support a redeployment. I think it's important that we not just take our troops out of the Middle East entirely, but that we redeploy troops to areas in the Middle East where they can quickly respond to threats, whether it be the Hezbollah in Lebanon, for example, or further violence in Iraq, or an increase in hostilities with Iran. I think we need to keep some troops in the region to be able to respond quickly to whatever threats arise. But I do think that we also need to redeploy some of those troops that are currently in Iraq to Afghanistan, because I think we're seeing a resurgence in the Taliban and Taliban supporters in Afghanistan. And I'd like to enhance our efforts there to really support the Afghani government, get rid of the Taliban, and keep searching for Osama bin Laden, because ultimately that's the main goal here. The war on terror should be about finding terrorists and either capturing them or killing them. The war on terror is not simply about Iraq, and I think that's the mentality we need to have. We need to be looking for terrorists, these terrorist leaders and these terrorist organizations wherever they are. We need to enlist the help of other nations in rooting them out and putting an end to them. But we're not going to do that if we stay mired in Iraq.
Alright, Mr. McKay, the second question from Mr. McCarthy is as follows. Governor McKay, you've made same-sex marriage and abortion the two main issues of your presidential campaign thus far. Why are those two issues more important to you than issues like the war in Iraq, our nation's economy, and the war on terror?
I don't believe they are the most important issues. I just think they are issues that have been neglected, and it is now time to address them. It is time for Democrats to stand up for our real values. It is time to not shy away from the problems and issues that confront us. That we Democrats, need to strongly support gay marriage and abortion. Those are two things which actually have been basically, part of the platform of the Democratic Party, that we support gay marriage and that we support abortion. And since these issues have been not talked about very much, I believe now is the time to confront them. I still find issues like our nation's economy and the war on terror important. Of course I do. But I think that now is the time. Now is a better time than before, because now Americans are more open-minded. Now politicians are starting to be willing to talk about these things. Now is the time to legalize gay marriage, to legalize abortion. And I'm going to keep on, voicing my views about these things. I think that those two should play a very important part of the presidential campaign, and I intend to do.
Okay, Mr. McKay, the second question from, Mr. McCarthy, the second question from Mr. McKay is as follows. If you support gay rights, why not make all states recognize it so that everyone in this country can be equal?
First of all, I want to go on record as saying that I do support gay rights, 100%. I support the right for same-sex couples to adopt. I believe that that's a non-issue, or it shouldn't be an issue. And as for same-sex marriage, I've made my position very clear. I support same-sex marriage, but I believe that it should be an issue best left to the states to decide. I am a Democrat, yes, and I do support that. However, I am not a fan of the federal government imposing its will unilaterally on the 50 states. I believe that the states can decide this issue for themselves, whether they choose to implement same-sex marriage or not. Obviously, I wouldn't support any state that chooses to ban same-sex marriage, but this is an issue that the people of the 50 states of this country should decide for themselves. When we as the federal government start imposing our will unilaterally on them, then we've lost the people. And that's not, I think, what the intent of the federal government should be. There have been arguments that the Equal Protection Clause in the Constitution should allow the federal government to mandate that all states should recognize same-sex marriage. I find that argument to be weak, and I don't buy it personally. Because ultimately, states don't have a right to enforce their public policy on other states. If same-sex marriage, for example, were legal in Wisconsin, I don't believe, from my understanding of the Constitution, that should be that policy that should then be enforced on other states. Obviously, I'd be extremely disappointed in any state that chose to ban gay marriage. But ultimately, I believe that times are changing. People are going to come around on this issue. But we can't impose our will on them. We need to let the people decide for themselves.
All right, Mr. McKay. Mr. McCarthy's final question is as follows. Governor McKay, if elected, how specifically do you plan on improving our nation's economy?
Well, very simply, even four things. I think that if we revive our country economically and and everything else, and generally improving the lives of the American people, I believe we need to open up free trade. We need to interact with other countries. We need to reduce free trade barriers. Number two, we need to increase corporation. We need to increase taxes on corporations, and I believe we need to raise taxes on the rich, because we need to get out of this big budget deficit that Mr. Bush has put us in. It's for our country, and it's not only is it a disaster for our government, it's a disaster for the people. People are getting less opportunities.